Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the TotalScreen.com. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about Hawkeye. Episode 1 and 2 was just released on Disney+. We're also going to be talking about The Wheel of Time, Cowboy Bebop, Ghostbusters Afterlife, but that's all in our On Tap section, so no spoilers for those. And that's where we're going to jump in, is with On Tap. What we've been watching, what we've been playing, what's on tap. On Tap is our section where we talk about stuff we've been watching, playing, whatever, but not in full spoilers, just kind of more vague details or just our kind of general thoughts about it. So The Wheel of Time came out this last Friday on Amazon Prime. I sat down and started watching through, going like, okay, I'm going to be watching through a bunch of this stuff, and then realized that they only put up the first 3 episodes and now they're releasing week to week. Trusty Amazon with their newfound love for week to week structures.
Yep. I mean, it's funny how we kind of went full circle from like Netflix just dumping everything on day one and like people complaining to like now like every streaming service, even Netflix in some cases now are starting to do week to week. Like Disney does it, Amazon does it. I'm sure like the other services I don't use do it. It's kind of crazy how that shifted.
Because Amazon used to do the binge style the same way Netflix did.
Yeah.
And now they've like reverted to this. And when they did that for certain things, they said like, oh, this is like a special case. It's because we really wanted to give time for these certain episodes that were really big deals. And now they're just doing it with everything.
And I think the motivation is more like these companies realize they can have a series that runs over a month or more. They could hook people for multiple months if they keep the shows running just that much longer, so people can't binge through them and then cancel right away.
I don't think that would be so much of an issue for Amazon, because I think most people who use Prime are using it for the shipping. Well, and then they're getting that as a side benefit.
I don't know. There might Amazon, be people who subscribe to Prime just for the shows.
No, there are, but I think most of them are doing it through that. I think for Amazon, the reason to do it week by week is so that it's in discussion. Because what they don't want to do is like have like people talk about it for like a few days and then not again for like a year.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
To be part of the cultural zeitgeist,
Yeah. That actually makes more sense.
For Amazon, not like for other services, like I think there very much is a reason for that. Like Disney Plus doesn't actually have that much original content on it.
No, it doesn't.
So when they have a show and they're releasing week to week, it's because they're not like Netflix, who releases like 4 new shows a week. They're like releasing the 1 episode a week, and then once that's done, they start their next show. They take like a couple weeks off and start their next show. They really space things out. So that's kind of, it's got to be different from carrier to carrier. But yeah, for Amazon, I think it's because of wanting to be part of the cultural zeitgeist. And Wheel of Time, I watched the first 3 episodes. First episode, I was actually kind of really bored with for the most part, through the beginning of it.
Like bored.
Well, it's just like these very like kind of teenage aged characters, and they're kind of shit, and you're like, or young adult thing, and you're just kind of like, no, I don't really care about them in the village. And there's this kind of like weird aesthetic that I think most fantasy or medieval play shows have, with the exception being something like Game of Thrones, where like it looks modern, like it looks like a show instead of like something that would take place in that era or in that kind of setting. And this has that too. It's something, like that's I think the great differentiator between between, say, something like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and pretty much any of the other ones. Like you watch like Witcher and it's like there's characters walking around with like haircuts that look like you would never see in that kind of setting. Or they're like, they're walking around and they're wearing kind of raggedy outfits, but they're like too clean. You know what I mean? And like too neat in like a way that just doesn't seem natural. Like it looks like they were made using machines.
It's obviously the production is not at the same level as what HBO spent on Game of Thrones or Amazon's spending on the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, I mean, Wheel of Time is actually supposed to have a pretty significant budget. Actually.
Yeah, Amazon's throwing real money at these shows.
But like, it still has that issue. You know what I mean?
Lord of the Rings, when that comes out, that has, I think that was like reported to have like the biggest budget ever put on like a show because like Amazon just threw so much money at Lord of the Rings.
I bet you it's going to have that same thing too that I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, probably.
It's going to show its budget in other areas, but like for like main production stuff, costumes, hair, stuff like that, it's going to look just like this does, I bet. And that's always distracting for me whenever a show's like that. And it wasn't before, but after Game of Thrones, after you see it done right, it's like really distracting every time you see it now. And that was the case with Wheel of Time. And then like a lot of the kind of drama between the characters and stuff, it just wasn't really that interesting. I just wasn't into it. And then the end of the episode, and it's a very, like, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but it fits very much into like the trope. If you start a show, a fantasy show or a game or anything like that, and the setting is like in a small village, but you know, it's like a big fantasy series, you kind of have an idea what's going to happen. You know what I mean? In like the first act. And that's become like a very tropey thing. But you also have to remember the Wheel of Time is a fairly old book series. It's not like Lord of the Rings old, but it's still old. And I think a lot of that trope kind of started from the Wheel of Time. Like I think they kind of like established that trope a lot in a lot of ways. So it feels a little tropey in that sense, but it's also kind of like the origin of that trope, I think, in a lot of ways. And it actually works really well. Like as I'm watching it, it didn't feel cliche or something. Mm-hmm. It felt impactful. And then I got a bit more into it. That kind of started establishing a structure for the series where like each episode has had like this kind of like big encounter kind of moment or this big moment where it's like things get really tense and stuff. And you get a lot of like crazy action that follows with the tension and big set pieces and things like that are really interesting. And that's kind of what the Wheel of Time has done so far in its first 3 episodes, where it's been like okay, middling kind of fantasy. And then it kind of picked up and would have like a really crazy sequence that really drew you in. And then after the first episode, it's been stronger, but it's still kind of like a little middling and then hits you hard, you know, at a different point. But yeah, it's an okay show. I've been enjoying it. I don't have any experience with the books. I just know about them vaguely in the background, you know?
Okay. So you can't speak to how this compares to the books, or you can't be
I can't say like how
never
this was
happened
adapted.
in the original novels.
Yeah, I want to check out and see.
This is spoiling the vision.
There's a lot of like fantasy YouTubers that are like huge into Wheel of Time, and I kind of want to check out some of their stuff just to see like what they think of this adaptation, you know, because I know that they're really big into the books. I only know vaguely about the books. Like I know the story about the author dying and Brandon Sanderson taking over. And I kind of know like that it's supposed to be like super detailed in the way that is kind of off-putting for some people in the same way like Tolkien is. Yeah, Tolkien's known for like a lot of people don't like reading Tolkien because it's just too much detail.
Right, yeah.
And Wheel of Time is supposed to be similar to that, you know? So, and that doesn't really come across when you're watching an adaptation. I don't know if people are going to be receptive of this or not because I'm just not as familiar with the original stuff. I would say if I was to rank like productions, and this has nothing to do with like writing or, you know, the general quality of like how people enjoy it, but like just in production quality alone, if like Game of Thrones would be like S tier. About as good as you can get when it comes to like production quality on like a fantasy show. I'd say something like Witcher would be like maybe somewhere between C and B tier.
Okay.
And with like Hercules and Xena,
that's
like
fair.
Clearly in C tier or lower, you know, like something like that, you know? Yeah, and then I would put this is like solid like A- tier. So it's like production quality wise, it's significantly better than The Witcher, but not quite up to snuff with like a Game of Thrones.
Okay. All right. Right. I mean, that kind of like fits where I kind of expected it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. Would you recommend it? Would you recommend people watch it?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. And here's what I'd say. Just get through the first episode, because the first episode, like I said, starts off slow. If you don't like it by the end of the first episode, then at least from where I'm at, and I'm only 3 episodes in because that's all that's out. So maybe there's some other crazy stuff that happens that really hooks you in. But from what I've seen so far, if you're not hooked by the end of the first episode, you're probably not going to be hooked at all, from what's out so far, at least. But don't expect to just be like drawn in from the first frame, you know? It starts a bit slow and meandering, and it takes a while before you get to that moment that kind of draws your attention in more. That's at the end of the first episode. So yeah, I would recommend watching it, but just stick through to the end of the first episode and then make your choice if you're going to keep watching. On the same day that Wheel of Time came out on Amazon, a big show came out on Netflix as well. This was the whole season dropped on Netflix because it's Netflix. So it's not just the first 3. All I've seen so far, though, is the first 3. I'm going to watch more. It's just that's all I've seen so far. And that is Cowboy Bebop.
Oh boy. Yeah, this one's been like a little bit divisive because, you know, Cowboy Bebop obviously is a very, very beloved anime. I love it. I watched it when it came on Adult Swim way back. Fantastic everything, especially the music, though. Music in Cowboy Bebop really sticks out.
Well, I got the same music here.
Yeah. And so this came out, and I've seen mixed reactions on social media. Visually, it doesn't look too great, I'm going to be honest. It looks a little uncanny valley. I heard there was issues with dialogue, a lot of like characters just speaking in like Joss Whedon-esque, too clever, just dialogue trying to be too clever. Yeah, so I don't know. I haven't personally watched it yet. I do want to watch it. I'm going slowly, mind you, back through the original anime because I kind of want to get my bearings about what Cowboy Bebop actually is versus memories are now like 20 or so years old of what I thought Cowboy Bebop was, because I want to judge this live action version, be able to judge it fairly and not against like rose colored memories.
I'd say rather than watching all of the anime and then watching the show, I'd watch it like back to back.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure I'm not 100. It's been a while since I've watched the anime, but from what I've watched so far, it very much feels like they're literally like it's the same episodes. Like it's
really?
Episode for episode. It's
That's
just that the live action ones are like 45 minutes long instead of like 22 minutes long.
Yeah. And I don't, that's another thing too that I'm like kind of iffy on. Like, I don't know why they had to increase the length. That just makes me think, if they're adapting 22-minute episodes, are they adding padding to the episodes?
That's just kind of a perception thing, because it's like in America, and I think in Western countries in general, if a show is an hour long, then it's a drama, and if it's a half hour long, it's a comedy. That's just like a perception thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't blame them for doing that, because that's just how everybody does it. I don't think that the extra padding is necessarily detrimental. Like, I think that the anime was like super snappy, and sometimes being able to kind of dwell on something actually adds to it. And a lot of times it's not like they just crammed in a bunch of extra content. Like, it might just be that, you have a longer take on an actor, like thinking about something. Like, you can see the thought running across their head. Whereas before in the anime, it would be like in a matter of seconds or something, it might take, quite a bit more in the show, and sometimes that works to its benefit. Sometimes it doesn't. That's kind of been my perception of Cowboy Bebop, is like nothing's like good or bad. It's kind of always both. It's like sometimes you'll look at the visual aesthetic and it's like, oh, okay, so what's the visual aesthetic? Is it good or bad? Well, sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's bad. It's like, oh, what about the acting? Is it good or bad? Well, sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's bad. That's kind of like every aspect of Cowboy Bebop in the live action show is like that. And so it's going to be divisive, because you're either going to attach yourself more to the good traits or the bad traits, depending either on what you're thinking about when you come into this or what ends up having a bigger effect on you. My biggest complaint with the series is that it feels like cosplay. Like a lot of it feels like cosplay. And it's not because like the costumes and stuff like that are bad per se. It's just that they kind of feel unnatural in a live action setting. Like when you see Spike in his costume in the anime, it's an anime, it fits. But when you see a live action actor in that costume in like a space western kind of environment, it just feels weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's like another big complaint I have about Cowboy Bebop is like it's trying so hard to look the part. You know, it makes me skeptical. Also, like the whole thing, like where they recreate the opening, you're supposed to say like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome," but it just looked weird to me. Like I don't know, like I was
that is the case with the show. Like sometimes it just feels weird, and sometimes it doesn't. One thing I will say to its defense, though, is that you get used to it. So some of it's just that some of it looking weird might largely just be up to the fact that we are fans of the anime, and so we have that in our head. And then when we see something that's really close to it but off, like it bothers us, but the more you watch it, the more you get used to it, and then that doesn't bother you anymore. So I think that that's very much the case with Cowboy Bebop, but I'm only 3 episodes in, so I'm just starting to feel that, like I'm just starting to feel the weirdness wear off, you know what I mean, in like 3 episodes in. And I don't know if by the end of the season I'll have felt that, you know, it has completely done that, or if it still feels weird to me. I don't know, because I'm not there yet, obviously. There's a lot of like really cool stuff in this. There's a lot of like really dynamic like camera work. There's some cool, like really cool looking shots. There's some really cool action scenes and stuff, really cool fight scenes that are shot in like really interesting ways. But then, like I said, everything's good and bad. So like you'll see a fight scene that looks really cool, and then you'll see another part of a fight scene that's like, this looks really slow. Like, why are these characters moving so slow in this fight scene? Like, it just doesn't look right, you know? And you'll get that too. And that's kind of where I am with the show. Like I said, everything's good and bad at the same time.
So that makes it average.
No, it's because it doesn't average out.
The good. Okay.
Because the thing is, it doesn't average out. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like it's distinctly good or distinctly bad in every area. So like sometimes you're watching it and you're caught up in it and you're really enjoying it. You're like, wow, this is really cool. I'm really liking this. And then sometimes it just hits you wrong and you're kind of like cringing, like, you know. And then something else will happen and it's like it grabs you again and you're like, okay, this is distinctly cool. I like this. And then it hits you weird again, you know? That's kind of what this show is, right? At least right now for me. And like I said, this very much might be the case of the fact that I'm just used to the anime and I need to get out of that headspace.
Maybe,
you know?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'll know better when I finish the show, but for right now, that's kind of what I'm guessing might be part of it. But there are definitely things I really enjoy about this. And I'm actually watching it, and there's like a cool fight scene where, and I think it's straight from the anime but it's like I said, it's been a while since I've watched it, where like he's fighting this one guy in the bathroom and he gets kind of pushed up to the wall and he kind of like goes backwards up the wall. And like, it's just in this camera angle. It just looks really cool. And there's just stuff like that where it's like, wow, that was like a really inventive and cool thing. And I think it was straight from the anime, but I don't remember because it's been a long time, you know?
Right, exactly. I guess like a big question I have is like, okay, so obviously would you recommend it? But like more so, I want to know like people who aren't fans of Cowboy Bebop, never seen it, like how do you think somebody coming into this fresh would feel about this show, given that? What do you suppose?
Well, it's kind of weird because it's so hyper stylish.
Yeah.
That might throw some people off. Like if they watch anime, but they haven't watched Cowboy Bebop for some reason, if there's somebody out there that fits to, then I think they'd be used to it. They go, oh, this is very anime-ish. I get this, you know?
Right.
If they're not if they've never really watched anime or they've never been into something like The Matrix or other things that have taken inspiration from anime like that, then they might be a little bit weirded out by how stylish it is. That might kind of throw them off a little bit as far as people that haven't watched it. But I definitely think that if you have watched the anime and you like it, you should watch this, because here's the thing.
Oh, okay.
If it's bad, the anime's still there.
Well, yes.
You know?
Obviously.
And if you like it, then you have something new. You have something to expand your love of Cowboy Bebop. I think I've talked to you about this before, but not on the podcast. But I got really into Harry Potter at one point in my life. Like I needed it. I was in a big state of depression, and I needed something to escape into, and I escaped into the books. Then I watched the movies, and then I played the games, and all these things like that. It was all different ways of experiencing the same story, and so I enjoyed them all, even though like I preferred the books. Like it was all the other ways were like, okay, this is another way to touch base with the story, and that's kind of what this could be.
Well, that makes sense.
You know?
Yeah. That's actually an interesting take because, yeah, that makes sense.
Because even if you don't like it, it's still another way of thinking about the anime, you know? And if you just really hate it, then just, you know, watch the anime and that's like a palate cleanse, you know? Forget the show ever existed and do it that way. But it's fine, you know? Like, I'm only 3 episodes in, so my opinion could drastically change, who knows? But right now, I actually like it. So, yep, that's Cowboy Bebop. The last show for our On Tap segment, or not show, but movie, is Ghostbusters Afterlife. So the way I'm going to describe this is kind of like the feeling I get from this movie in general, which is that it does a really good job of blending like that kind of PG-13-esque horror, you know, that you would get a lot in the 80s with like some of the Steven, like Silver Bullet or things like that weren't too gory or weren't too like horrorish, but had like a bit of it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And then, but they were like mostly for like kids or teenagers to watch, so they weren't as bad. It wasn't like you're watching Cronenberg, you know? It does a good job of balancing that and like humor through good characterization, which I always enjoy. And in general, like you talked before we were doing the podcast that you were worried that it felt like Ghostbusters a la Stranger Things.
Yeah,
and there
kind of like
is a
from
bit
the
of
trailers looks like that, like almost.
There is a bit of that. I wouldn't necessarily say it feels like Stranger Things itself, like specifically. I'd say it more feels like an 80s kids adventure kind of thing. Like in parts.
Okay.
And the one thing I think that's inconsistent with this movie is that it's kind of a cross between that and the nostalgia from the original and like the things that play into the nostalgia from the original. So when you have a big pop moment, like, oh, here's the Ghostbusters, they're together again in the scene, it almost feels like in contrast to what you've been watching. Because it's like, oh, that's like the nostalgia bomb part, but then like the adventure part is like now kind of on hold or something. So that's like kind of like the one thing that kind of felt really inconsistent to me.
Right.
But in general, I really liked it. I thought the characterization was really good. I wanted to spend more time with the characters. There were characters that you just kind of, you get a few quips from that I'm like, I kind of want to see more of the dynamic between the characters, like those characters that like don't even have names. They're just kind of like background characters, but it's like they're clearly like woven into it. And I want to see more of them and their interaction with other characters. I want to know more people in this town. Like there's some interesting actors they picked that have just like a few lines and then you just never see them again. And it's like, I kind of want to see more of that character. You know, I want to see like what else that character is doing and how else they interact and how they react to these things going on. But you don't really get that because it's kind of more focused in on the central characters.
Mm-hmm, right.
But it does a really good job of characterization, and that's what makes me want to see more of them. And so that's like a benefit to it. Another thing is that like what this movie does that's really cool is it finds a way to tie into the lore of the first Ghostbusters movie in like a really cool way. Like it kind of like explains things from the first Ghostbusters movie as it's explaining what's happening in this one.
Right.
It's like, okay, something's happening in this one. Why is this happening? Why are ghosts back? What's this? And then you realize, this is directly tied to the original movie, you know?
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I pretty much like guessed it from like the trailers and from I've seen, you know, what like the link or the thread is.
It's more than you think though.
Oh, okay.
Like there's I know if you watch the trailers, you see certain things that are familiar, like, oh, okay, they're touching on this again. But it's like it's more than that. They're actually like explaining that. They're actually like kind of giving more detail into that. And kind of explaining like why it happened in New York in the first place is explained in this movie, for example. So it's like things like that are kind of like really interesting, the way they kind of add it in. I don't know. I really enjoyed the movie. I went with a friend of mine who was kind of very skeptical about the movie going in, and he was upset. He's one of those guys. He was really pissed off at Bill Murray because like it ruined the chances of, you know, doing a Ghostbusters reunion because Bill Murray put it off for so long, and then, you know, of course, the actor who played Egon passed away, and then
you know, Bill Murray and Harold Ramis,
had
a falling out over Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
And they didn't really reconcile that until Harold Ramis was on his deathbed.
Yeah. And so my friend was like kind of held some hostility towards Bill Murray because of that, you know, that like they weren't able to kind of do something to bring everybody back together because of him and stuff. And so he was very skeptical about this movie, going like, I don't want this. I wanted it when they were all still around, and now I can't have that and stuff like that. He walked out of this movie loving it.
Oh, really?
He was like very happy with the way it turned out.
Interesting.
I'll also say,
well, that's like, promising.
Yeah. I don't have too much else to say without getting into spoilers. So the last thing I'll say is that there are 2 post-credit scenes. This is like Marvel style double post-credits. The second post-credit scene, after all the credits roll, after all the regular scroll happens, you know, at the very end, is a very meaningful post-credit scene. So make sure you stick around for that, because it really ties into it. And the last thing I'll say is that it's kind of cool that the director for this is Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan Reitman, who directed the original.
Yes.
And what's cool about that is that this movie is very much about like legacy. It's about the family of one of the Ghostbusters kind of taking up that mantle after his passing and stuff. So when you have that, and then you have the son of the director of the original doing the new one, it relates, because it's all like about legacy. It's about continuing on with a legacy or something. And so like that kind of has like a meaning to it in itself.
Right. Yeah. So and that's pretty cool.
A lot of people are tearing this movie to shreds. Some people are really enjoying it. Some people are saying, oh, it's nothing but nostalgia and everything else is shallow and meaningless and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's somewhere in between that. It's definitely like there is parts where the nostalgia can be distracting and stuff, but the movie's good. It's a fun movie. Paul Rudd's hilarious in it. He's great in it. There's a lot of really good characterization that makes the characters really memorable. The one thing I promised to get to, and I had forgotten to get to on this already, is I think when we were talking about Wheel of Time or something, I had mentioned the idea of things not feeling realistic. Or no, it was when we were talking about Cowboy Bebop, I think.
So that was a Cowboy Bebop.
And I was talking about things feeling kind of like unnatural or something, you know? There is a bit of that in Ghostbusters. There were several moments where I was like, oh, okay, so these kids are doing this thing that's really dangerous. Like, why aren't there more adults getting in their way? Why aren't they, like, this just seems unnatural that they would be like this free to do something this horrifically dangerous that they're doing. Like, it just feels kind of like unrealistic. But then I started thinking, as that thought was occurring to me, I was like, wait a minute. That kind of goes along with what 80s movies were like, you know? Like 80s movies were all about that. 80s movies all throughout realism, just completely out the window, including Ghostbusters. Like, oh, how would they react? Like, you know, the Ghostbusters, they tear through town and stuff, and they create so much damage. And it's like, oh yeah, they'll bring up like a off comment about like a lawsuit or something, or the fact that they're going to be fined money or something. But they don't, it's not like they put them in prison or lock them away or do anything meaningful that's going to stop them from doing something again, you know? And that's the same case here. So like, it just kind of carries on in the same way. And as I thought about that, I was like, you know, you wouldn't be able to make this movie take place in the same universe as the original movie if you tried to like enforce some aspect of realism in that way. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that made that one part that I struggled with a little bit early in the movie, it kind of like allowed me to kind of swallow that down and not feel anything about it anymore, you know?
Nice. So how does it compare to like the rest of the franchise? How would you
I haven't seen the all-female one.
Okay.
I haven't seen that, so I don't know. I'd say I like it better than 2. I haven't seen the first one in a while. It has been a while since I've watched it, so I'd need to refresh it.
Yeah, it's probably not going to change my opinion that the original is the go. The original is probably still the best.
I'd guess that. I haven't seen the original in a while, so it's hard for me to say. But but it's definitely like, of the ones I've seen, you know, which is just the 3 really. It would be my second favorite after the original. I definitely like it more than the second one.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Hey, yeah, sounds good to me. I mean, I'll watch it whenever it hits a streaming platform, I guess.
And that's Ghostbusters Afterlife, and that's the end of our On Tap segment. And that brings us to our final segment, full spoilers. Full Spoilers being the segment where we talk about a catalog show or movie, something that we watched in full spoilers. And this week, we're going to be talking about the first 2 episodes of Hawkeye. That's episode 1, Never Meet Your Heroes, and episode 2, Hide and Seek. So what were your general thoughts of Hawkeye?
My general thoughts are this is a very fun show. This is definitely shaping up, based on just the first 2 episodes, to be a very entertaining buddy cop style action comedy show blend. They're really leaning into the comedy aspect. I know it's heavily based on Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye, even to the point where the
it's
artwork,
pretty much a straight adaptation, isn't it?
Probably. I haven't actually read it, but the artwork and stuff is inspired or derivative of David Age's work on Hawkeye, which, by the way, they're not crediting him or cutting him a check for any of this, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, Disney. Come on. Pay your creatives. Come on. Don't do this.
This is because I know it has the Tracksuit Mafia that always say bro,
yes,
which was apparently a big part of that comic series, and just kind of Hawkeye being more beat up and stuff is specifically from that run of the comics. I liked it as well. I also thought it was fun.
It's a little thing, but I love the fact that Hawkeye is now partially deaf because of all the crap that he's went through, being on the Avengers.
Yeah.
They actually acknowledge the toll some of that shit could actually have on a human body. I like that. It's a small thing, but it really makes it feel like it's a real thing.
What did you think of the opening scene where you see a young Kate Bishop during the attack on New York?
Yeah, I thought that was a really awesome scene. At first, I thought it was quite, it's oh, they're doing our thing. We're flashing back to this character as a kid and get to see their happy family and stuff before. And then, but then they start showing the attack on New York. That's when my opinion turned around. I thought, oh, that's genuinely cool. Yeah. I like that.
I know in Loki when they were revisiting that, or in some other shows when they've revisited that moment, they've just straight up used footage. And here it's almost they recreated parts of it to get it from that right angle. But they're specific scenes. I specifically remember that scene in Avengers where Hawkeye jumped off the building and shot the arrow to grapple down and stuff. But we're seeing it from a different angle here. So it's not they just reused the same footage. So I thought that was really cool, the way they kind of recreated these events and stuff from a different perspective, which I don't think they've really done before with, when they've cut to Avengers footage. They've always just kind of cut to the actual footage rather than recreating it.
Right.
I dug that. I think they might have gone a little too long without showing Hawkeye at the beginning, because they had that whole opening sequence and then another sequence, modern sequence with Kate Bishop, where she's shooting the bell in the clock tower.
Yeah.
And so it was just here's a big Kate scene. Here's a credit scene kind of completely focused on Kate. Here's another Kate scene. So it took quite a bit before they brought actual Hawkeye into the episode. It was literally maybe, a third of the way through the episode before he appeared. I thought that was a little off, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the scene of him at the musical. I thought the musical was going to be more a good musical number, and it ended up just being kind of more funny because it was so bad.
Yeah, it was. They were spoofing musicals.
I could do this all day. And Hulk, what's the magic word? Smash!
They're 100% going to release that as a single at some point.
Well, especially after Agatha All Along ended up becoming a big hit.
Agatha All Along actually got nominated for a Grammy. Forgot to mention that earlier. But
yeah. And it was a number 1 too, on the charts when it came out. So.
So Marvel and Disney's going to try their hand again with this.
Yeah, definitely.
But I loved it.
I love the joke about Ant-Man being there even though he wasn't, or something.
Yeah, Ant-Man being there even though he,
I thought it was funny. It was different than what I expected. From the way they showed it in the thing, I thought it was going to be played off as it was a really good musical, and instead it was played off, like I said, as a really bad musical, and that's what made it funny,
Right. It's looking like Kate Bishop's the band her mother's dating is going to be the main villain. I was going to say they're making it too obvious, so they're going to pull a twist, but I'm no, Marvel typically doesn't do that. I always think they're doing that, but then they don't do it. So yeah.
It seems obvious he's the main villain. We don't really understand what his goal is, yet.
Right.
That's one of the things I was saying, that I feel something feels a little off in the show, but I can't quite place it. So it's not I can register it as a complaint about the show, because because I can't quite place exactly what it is. It's just something feels a little off that I'm kind of not enjoying. I can't place what it is.
I don't have that feeling. Like whatever feeling you're feeling, I don't have that feeling so far.
I think part of it's like that, maybe that it's just that we're not understanding the motivations of some of the characters. It's that guy that you're mentioning, very clearly a villain, but he's characterized very strangely. Like he's characterized he's reading a book and all that stuff. But as he's explaining that he's reading a book on being a stepfather, he's saying it in a way that's like very like mustache twirly villain or something.
Yeah,
it just feels off to me. Like I think that might be what it is.
That's what kind of like has me thinking like it's a red herring because they're being like really super obvious about it.
Yeah, exactly. But like then it doesn't feel like it is.
But at the same time, like Marvel's known for like doing stuff in like a very obvious way and then like sincerely sticking to it. So I don't know if that's what's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, it almost certainly is. Like I can't really imagine a reason why it wouldn't be.
Right.
We also have, there's two big factors that are coming into the show. That one of them is like we just get a glimpse of it at the very end of the second episode, and that's the character of Echo.
Yes.
Was
that Echo at the end of the episode? It was. Oh, okay, interesting. Because like she's being portrayed as like a villain here.
Yeah.
And she's not supposed to be a villain.
Yeah, so I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's interesting.
She's the person that the guy was reporting to. That's why he kept like repeating himself and over exaggerating his mouth movements and stuff, because she's deaf.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't catch on to that.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we haven't seen at all of yet is that we know that Yelena's in this.
Well, I mean, we don't know. We got like a hint.
It's widely reported.
Is it widely reported she actually shows up?
Yeah, okay. It's widely reported that she's in this.
It's widely reported. I haven't like looked at the wide reports.
Not even rumored. I mean, like it's straight up cast listing, put out by Marvel.
Okay, well that makes sense. They teased that at the end of Black Widow. I mean,
yeah. And so we don't know like how they're gonna fit into this,
Yeah.
Because it seems like pretty specific what's going on right now, and we don't know like how other things are going to fit into that.
Well, so right now we got these starts, right? We know these things. We know the man, Kate Bishop's mother, is dating is sketch as fuck. We know there's another wealthy socialite who had a rivalry with this guy who is dead. We know that.
No, that's his uncle that died.
Was that his uncle?
Yeah.
I have no idea. They didn't really like make it clear that they were related.
He's a weird character because he came in and immediately started talking to Kate Bishop and was basically just dissing her mom right to her face. And it was like, what? Yeah. Like, it just felt very weird how aggressively like negative he was being about her mom to her face, It's like, ooh, like you'd think maybe that would be like something that he kind of hide or say under her breath that she would catch. But no, he's like straight up to her like, oh, your mom. Yeah, she's not really worthy, just kind of like straight up, I thought that was a little strange, and that's again, like we were saying about the guy that her mom's dating too. It's like very just like strange characterization for those characters,
It is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like his uncle is dead, I guess. And there was like an underground, like black market auction, like happening at this event that they were all attending. Right. And it was crashed by the tracksuit mafia who stole, or who were trying to steal like a watch from the auction for some reason.
What that was from? Like, did they I didn't catch on to anything.
I didn't catch on to what that was from. I didn't look it up either.
Yeah.
They're after some watch for some reason. And it's funny too that like the watch was like important because like they didn't even show it as like anything like bidding up. The two people, the one who is like the candidate for main series villain and the other one who's now dead, were like fighting over Ronan's sword. They weren't fighting over the watch. So it's like a little weird. Like you would think like the way the story structure would be is like they would introduce the item of importance. Then they'd have like the characters duke it out. Then they have the tracksuit mafia come in and attempt to steal that. But they're after something completely different that's not shown to the audience beforehand.
That's what I mean. Like there's a lot of stuff that feels weird and I just can't quite place why. why. Like what you're talking about fits into exactly what I'm saying with that weird feeling I'm having with the series where like there's something that I'm kind of like I don't like and I can't quite place exactly what it is, but that's one of the things that ties into that feeling for me. Was like that moment. It feels pretty clear what the plot is, but at the same time it doesn't, like in a weird way.
Yeah, and now that I like listen to you like explain it makes sense. Yeah, there is a little bit of weirdness with the show, but 2 episodes in.
Yeah, it's only 2 episodes in. So.
I'm enjoying it. I think Haley Steinfeld is fantastic in the show as Kate Bishop.
It's like that new busiest actress in Hollywood.
Yeah, right. She's really the force, like, injecting energy into this project.
She was Gwen Stacy in Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, well, no, I didn't know that.
She does a ton of stuff, so.
Yeah, she's doing something else as well right now. But yeah, she's great. Jeremy Renner is Jeremy Renner.
Him or hate him, he's who he is.
I didn't really care too much for the scene that's like the LARP scene. I thought that was kind of cheesy.
Yeah, and it felt really like out of place. Like I've seen LARP scenes in movies and stuff where they find like a good way of bringing that in, and it's fun and it's funny and stuff.
Yeah,
and this just kind of felt like forced. Yeah, like it didn't feel like it really out of place.
It'd be like, shout out to the nerds.
I think it would have been funny if like Hawkeye actually kind of enjoyed it a little bit.
Yes, yeah, it would have been like a little funnier.
Like begrudgingly enjoyed it. Like he didn't want to, but then he got into it somehow, I think that would have been funny, but they didn't really portray that.
Like if they did when he was fighting that guy for like Rodin's suit, like if he actually started getting into it, the guy's like, hey, what the hell? Like, what about our deal? Like that would have been a lot funnier.
And it just seems like it was structured for something like that to happen, but it didn't.
Right, yeah.
So it felt strange. And I guess maybe you could say that that's a strength of the show, that it goes against expectation, but it just felt weird to me. Like it felt off.
Yeah. But I'm enjoying it. Again, Marvel's on a streak right now. Looking forward to the rest of the episodes. This is a kind of show that makes me like wish Disney did do like a drop, because like I would probably be binging this like every day if like all the episodes were available. But fun show.
Definitely by the time it ended, I was like, no, I want to watch another episode.
I want to see what happens next right now.
Yeah. Well, we'll have something to talk about next time. But that's it for full spoilers, I guess.
That's all my thoughts.
Okay, that brings an end to full spoilers. So that's it for our show as well. Next week, we are going to take a break from Hawkeye. We're not going to be talking about Hawkeye next week. We're talking about the week after. And the reason why is because we're going to be doing a special episode next week. If you've listened to our past podcast, we used to do a segment called Advocates of Great Television, where we would each kind of pick an episode of a TV show, usually themed, like we'd have a theme that we had to pick from, and then we'd watch it and discuss it, kind of like and we'd be advocates for the show that we picked. Well, we're going to be doing that again for this podcast, but this time we're changing the name. It's Advocates of Great Entertainment, because we're not limiting ourselves to TV shows. It could be a movie or it could be a game, and this time we're doing holiday movies. That's our theme. Yeah. So what we're going to be talking about
holiday films, which it's Christmas. There is an abundance of films.
Oh yeah,
there's the new one out this year, 8-Bit Christmas. If you love Nintendo, if you love Christmas, go on HBO Max.
I think I saw something that said there's something like over 75 new Christmas movies this year.
Well, most of them are from the Hallmark Channel. Hallmark Channel freaking cranks them out. They just got like a formula. I think they have like a script that's basically just like Mad Libs, and you just fill in the blanks, and then that's a new Christmas movie.
And Netflix is doing that too. Netflix has I think like 6 or 8 Christmas movies coming this year just from Netflix, like originals, not just coming to Netflix, but original Netflix ones. But yeah, so we're doing holiday movies. We each picked a holiday movie to cover. So our holiday movie picks are, Will picked Scrooged, which you can find on Paramount Plus. Tell me a little bit about your pick.
Okay, so Scrooged is a 1980s comedy. It's like a parody of A Christmas Carol with Bill Murray as a star. I know it's not well regarded. I know like it was critically panned, But I watched this movie when I was a kid, when I was like very young, and I loved it. I loved it then. And I love it now. I think Bill Murray's brilliant in it. I think everybody's fucking brilliant in that movie. I don't know what the hell the critics' problems with this movie is.
There's a lot of good movies that critics were kind of harsh on.
Like I hear it's mean spirited. I mean, well, it's a parody, and it's just Bill Murray. Yeah, Bill Murray's a jackass, but so that's the character. I don't know. It's a great movie. Like, there's a lot of gags, especially like the second ghost, the ghost of Christmas Present. Carol Kane. She was in Kimmy Schmidt too.
Yeah, she's the landlord.
Yep, she's like fantastic. Oh, I forgot Bobcat Goldthwait's in this movie.
He's great.
I just recommend it. I think people should watch it. If you've never seen it before, I think you'll have a good time with it. I'll let you talk now.
Yep. So that's Scrooged, and you can find that on Paramount Plus. My pick is going to be About a Boy, which is on Peacock. About a Boy is a British movie. It stars Hugh Grant and Nicholas Hoult from he played Beast in the new X-Men movies, and that's
all he's known for. He's playing Beast.
This is him as a kid.
Yeah.
So he's the titular boy in About a Boy. And so it's about this young boy who's in a kind of a bad situation. His mom's like, his single mom is struggling very, very hard with depression, and he's getting picked on at school, and he's really struggling. And he ends up kind of entering the life of this guy who's basically like the most shallow person you can imagine. His whole life is basically living off of the royalties of a Christmas carol that his dad wrote. So his dad wrote like this famous Christmas carol that everybody knows, and he just like lives off the royalties. He's never worked a day in his life. He's super shallow. Everything's about just, getting girls and, having a nice haircut and doing stuff like that. And he somehow gets involved in this kid's life, and it's about kind of how the two of them change each other's like outcomes, in life. And it's a really good kind of sweet Christmas movie. So it's not corny like a like a Hallmark movie, but it's got a positive spin to it. It's a good show. Well, but it's also really funny. Nice. It's also really funny because of how shallow Hugh Grant's character is. It's like hilarious. There's one part I'll say, it's not really a spoiler because it's a single scene where they're like following like an ambulance, and he's talking like very somberly, like he's all, this is very bad. We're going to the hospital. It's a very hard thing to do, or something. He's like narrating it, and then he says, but following the ambulance and driving as fast as I want on the street is fantastic. So that's About a Boy, and that is on Peacock. So watch both of those movies, and then for next week's podcast we're just going to be talking about those movies. That's going to be our main topic. So that's it for the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Foxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. You can get our podcast on Pocket Cast, Apple Podcast, Podcast Addict, any podcast client of choice you can find it on. So please do that. Leave us a comment through Twitter, through SoundCloud, through whatever other means you can find us. We'd be happy to hear them, good, bad, or indifferent, as I always say. But that's it. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.